Hello everybody, and in this lesson we will dive into the world of classical frame-by-frame animation. So, take out your graphic tablets if you have ones, as today we will have to draw really a lot. For this lesson it's enough to have the cheapest model of Wacom Intus, and if you don't have a graphic tablet, the process itself will be less comfortable. So, in this lesson we will study the interface of the Adobe Animate, look at the principle of its work, make our first animations, and of course show you how to use Animate together with After Effects. So let's start, launch Adobe Animate, and first of all let's create a new document. For that, go to File menu and choose New, or just press Ctrl-N. Here choose ActionScript 3. This format suits perfectly for our goals, and other formats go beyond this tutorial. The resolution doesn't matter right now, but I will make it 800 by 600 as usual. Okay, and couple words about frame rate. Usually, animators work in 24 frames per second, but in our first animations we will draw on 2s, so we can decrease the frame rate to 12. It's also a widespread trick. In this way animators decrease the amount of work in half, and it also helps to get rid of jittering strokes, so that the animation looks sharper, and in most cases it really helps to achieve a really cool look. Now click on OK button. And to be on the same page, let's set the working space to Classic. This setting, in our opinion, is the most suitable for beginners. Now let's have a quick overview of the main program panels. Viewport takes up the largest part of the working space. Here we will be drawing and watch the results of our work. Above it, there is a timeline. Here we will work with the layers and frames. And there is a toolbar to the left. It's pretty similar to those in Photoshop or Illustrator. And here on the right side, there is a Properties panel where you can see the properties of the chosen tool or object. And I will draw a small curve with the brush tool, just to demonstrate what Properties panel displays when we select the object in Viewport. And if nothing is selected, I mean if we click with the Selection tool on empty space of Viewport, Properties panel will display the settings of the current document, such as frame rate, resolution, and etc. And the last panel we are going to consider today is Library. It's like the project panel in After Effects. Here will be stored all the imported materials and symbols, which we are going to talk about later. As it was mentioned before, in frame-by-frame animation we will have to draw a lot, so a lot of time we will spend especially in Viewport. And that's why let's have a look at its main navigation tools. To scale the image you can scroll the mouse wheel together with pressed Ctrl, and it will be scaled relatively to the position of your cursor. If you're working with a graphic tablet, it will be more comfortable to set the zoom function to one of its buttons. Thus, you will be able to zoom in or zoom out the image just by holding down this button and moving the pen right and leftwards. Next important tool for navigation is a hand tool. It gives the possibility to freely move through canvas. And like in After Effects, you can activate it just by holding the space button. This is also one of the commands which is more comfortable to bind to the buttons of your graphic tablet. The next tool will spare you back and will probably reduce the number of movements around your tablet. It's Rotation tool. It allows you to rotate the canvas, and it's a really useful function, especially if you drew a lot before on paper and get used to rotate the paper sheet in any way you want. And to return the canvas to the initial state, just click this button, Center Stage. And with the help of this button, we can show and hide everything that is out of the canvas. And to demonstrate it, I will create a simple drawing. Now press the button, and as you can see, the image is precisely cut with the edge of the canvas. With these two elements, we can switch between scenes and symbols. It's something similar to compositions in After Effects, and we will talk about it later. So let's move on. The next important panel is of course Timeline. Well, the process of animation itself differs from that which you saw in After Effects, where in-between frames were created automatically. In frame-by-frame animation, if we need to move the object within 6 frames, we need to create 6 different drawings. That's how it works. On the timeline in Adobe Animate, we will work with frames and their numbers. Seconds are displayed here above, but if you have Animate version older than CC 2018, you will have to follow the seconds here below. You have also definitely tried to move the timeline cursor around the blank timeline, but Animate won't allow you to do it until you create frames. In After Effects, we initially set the duration of the composition, but here, duration of the stage is defined by the frames you create. So, in Animate, we have the following kinds of frames. The first is a keyframe. is the moment of time when the properties of the drawing is going to change. To put the keyframe, use the hotkey F6 or function F6 if you're on Mac. And on the timeline, the blank keyframe is marked as a rectangle with uncolored circle inside. But if I draw something on this frame, it will be shown on the timeline with colored circle, and this is how the keyframes with the drawings are marked. And just for more clarity, I will draw on this frame something a little bit more complex. Now pay attention that if the last keyframe has the drawing on it, the new keyframe, which I will add by pressing F6, won't be blank, it will have the same drawing. And that can be useful in cases when on the next frame you have to add some minor changes, and for this purpose you don't have to recreate the whole drawing, just edit the existing one. But if you want to insert a blank keyframe after the frame with the drawing, press F7, and on this frame you can draw something absolutely new from scratch. Okay, something like that. And of course, there are cases when we need to extend the duration of the keyframe. For example, I want this image to be shown on the screen for more than one frame. For this purpose, we will need to insert frame. The hotkey is F5. As you can see, an empty rectangle is added to the keyframe. They don't have a separation between them, and that means that on this timeline area we will show the drawing from this keyframe. Just for clarity, I will add several more frames to its duration. And now this image is being shown during 4 frames. But if you want to reduce the duration of this keyframe, you need a command remove frames, Shift F5. But don't remove the drawing itself by accident, because Shift F5 removes all selected frames. For example, with its help I can remove these blank keyframes. And it's also necessary to mention that you can find all the separations with frames in the context menu of frame, but we strongly recommend you to use hotkeys. Now let's get used to work with timeline and frames and create our first simple animation. I will remove all frames and create a new blank keyframe. And now we are going to draw a simple face, eyes, mouth and nose, and make the animation of blinking. But first of all, a couple of words about how to draw in Adobe Animate. We will draw with the brush tool, here it is on the toolbar. Hotkey is B, and you can set the color and thickness in the Properties panel. You can also easily adjust the brush size with the help of square brackets on your keyboard. And you can edit your drawings in following ways. You can erase something that didn't go well with Eraser tool. Hotkey is E. You can also select objects with the help of Selection tool, just by clicking on them, or like this, with selection areas, and move them in any way you want. And you can easily transform drawn objects with the help of Retransform tool. Hotkey is Q. And of course, selected objects can be removed by pressing Delete. If you need to select an area of very custom shape, you can use Lasso tool. Hotkey is L. For example, I will select this hand, and now I can also transform it. Okay, I will remove this example, and let's finally draw a simple face. I will draw it as simple as possible to make every one of you be able to repeat it. We will start from the eye. I will make it like this, really long. Now let's draw a pupil. And you can fill in the area inside closed path with the help of the Pen Bucket tool. Here it is on the toolbar, and the hotkey is K. Well done, the first eye is ready, and the second we can make symmetrical. To make a copy of this eye, I will select it and move it to the right holding down Alt key. If the eye is not symmetrical, you can flip it horizontally. Eyes are ready, and now let's draw nose and mouth. So that we got this simple face. Now let's create a new blank keyframe by pressing F7, and to move one frame forwards or backwards, use angle brackets on your keyboard. And here it would be nice to see the previous frame at least half transparent. Such function of course exists, it is called onion skin, and it can be switched on over here. Now these two sliders appeared over the time cursor, and with their help we can adjust how many frames we want to see before and after the current one. Just for demonstration, I will add several more blank keyframes and draw something on one of them. As you can see, the next frames are shown in green color and the previous frames in blue. Now I will remove all these frames and on the second frame I will draw half-closed eyes. The nose and mouth we can copy from the first frame. For that, let's move to the first frame, select the mouth and the nose in viewport, press Ctrl+C, move to the second frame, and here press Shift-Ctrl+V. In this case, the nose and the mouth will be pasted in the same place like it was in the previous frame. If you just press Ctrl+V, the objects would be pasted in a completely wrong place, so just remember these hotkeys. Now let's create a new keyframe with drawing by pressing F6. Let's remove the eyes and draw them completely closed. Okay, the first half of animation is ready. Now let's make the eyes opening. The next what we need is again the position with the half-opened eyes. In fact, you can simply copy the second keyframe. To do that, just select it on the timeline and press Alt-Ctrl+C. Then select the frame in which you want to insert it and press Alt-Ctrl+V. So just remember, if you work with the frames on the timeline, for standard commands copy, cut, paste, you have to add the Alt key to the regular combinations. Now we need to create the last position where the eyes are completely opened. And you can copy the frame by simply dragging it on the timeline with the pressed Alt. Okay, let's make a preview. For that, press Enter. And by default, preview playback is not looped. So let's fix it. Go to Control menu and check here Loop Playback. Okay. But now everything happens very fast. So let's extend the first and the last frame with the help of F5. And let me show you one more way how you can extend the last frame. Select on the timeline the moment till which you want to extend it and press F5. Check the result. And that's it. Let's make our animation a bit more interesting and in the last position open the character's mouth. But to get the perfect loop, copy the first frame and paste it to the end. Of course, closing the mouth within one frame will look like lazy work, so let's create one in-between frame for this animation. Select the last frame of the drawing with the opened mouth, convert it to the keyframe by pressing F6, and with the help of eraser and brush tool, correct the position of the mouth to half opened. Check the result. Okay, it looks better now. Of course, you can add another in-between frame for the opening of the mouth, but let's move on and consider the situation if we, for example, need to change the position of this animation. And I hope that it's obvious that if I try to change something like this, it will happen only on a single frame. For these cases, we need this button, Edit Multiple Frames. It allows to edit several frames at once. With the help of these sliders in the timeline, you mark which frames you are going to edit. In viewport, they all will be shown in their final look with no half-transparent frames. So just select them all and move wherever you want. We can also change their color simultaneously. Check the result. That's it. Everything was moved correctly and the color was changed everywhere. Of course, you can polish this animation, but here it was important to understand how to work with timeline and frames. So let's move on. On the timeline, except frames, we will also work with layers. To create a new layer, you have to click on this button. If you want to remove layers, just select them and click on this bin. I will create a new one, so we can draw on it now. For example, I will draw a head. Pay attention that the new layer is created with one keyframe which have the length of the whole stage animation. So if you want to animate something on the new layer, don't forget to convert this timeline area into blank keyframes first, and only after that start doing animation. And just as an example, I will create the animation of this simple splash and sparkles. That's it. You can also rename layers. To rename the layer, just double-click on its name and type in the new one. I will rename all of them, just for clarity. And you can also place the layers into folders on the timeline. Just press this button to create new folder, and then place the layers into it. But folder itself doesn't work as pre-composed in After Effects. You can't move it along the timeline. It is basically a tool for certain layers, not for their animation. Like in After Effects, you can change the layers order, copy them, duplicate, and so on. But unfortunately, these commands don't have hotkeys by default, except Shift-Ctrl+C for copying layers. so that you can do these operations through the context menu of the layer. But if it's necessary, you can easily bind your hotkeys. To do that, go to Edit menu, Keyboard Shortcuts, find necessary command in Categories or with the help of search fields. For example, let's find Insert New Layer command, then click on its shortcut field, and press the desired key combination. That's it! Like in After Effects, every layer has several modes. You can find all these modes in these 3 columns. With the help of Eye column, we can hide and show the layer. With the help of the Lock column, lock them. And with the help of this small rectangle, we can switch to Outline Display mode and vice versa. You can also turn on Solo for any of these modes. For example, if I click with the pressed Alt on the column with the eye of the head layer, Animate will hide all other layers. The same will work for locking layers and outline mode. It's very comfortable, as if we, for example, use Eraser tool let's change the color of one of the parts and remove the outline of the pencil. For that, just select it by double-clicking and press delete. That was an easy and really fast way to create shadows. Moreover, this shadow is still editable. And the last thing we would like to tell you about is groups. With their help, we can group the drawn objects. It's pretty useful if you have some complex design elements which consist of several parts, for example, like this eye. Now to select this eye, you have to select each its element, and if the eye is for example placed above the body, it becomes very hard to select it correctly. So it's better to group such objects. For that, just select all the eye elements and press Ctrl G. Now all of them are in the same group, so you can duplicate it and animate the eyes. If you want to get inside the group, just double-click it in Viewport and change whatever you want inside. It won't affect its copies, unlikely to symbol. Well, and if you want to draw eyelids above this group in the main scene, just don't forget to enable Object Drawing Mode to make the new drawings be above the group. And basically, these were the main tools that you will need to finalize the animation inside Animate. And the process itself is to carefully redraw each frame with their help. It is a time-consuming work, so here are several tips about how to approach it in the right way. First of all, do the cleanup of separate complex elements on separate layers. Secondly, optimize the drawing process. If it is possible, edit already drawn elements from the previous frames. And of course, use groups and objects to make the elements of the same layer not to interact with each other. As it was mentioned before, it is not very comfortable to make stylization inside Adobe Animate, so if you still need to add to the result animated noise and textures, it is better to do it in After Effects or Photoshop. If it is necessary, you can export separate layers into SWF files, then import them into After Effects and make the stylization there. But before export, don't forget in Publish settings to uncheck the Include Hidden Layers option, so that the Animate won't render hidden layers. And gradually, we reach the second cleanup technique with the help of After Effects. We are not going to discuss it in details, because we are more than familiar with this application. Here you just have to import SWF file of draft animation, then redraw everything with pen tool on shape layers, and animate its path property. It will be probably easier, because in some places you can make easings without making drawing on each frame. On the other hand, After Effects is not very comfortable for objects which could be drawn with the brush tool easier, and moreover, you can also get confused in the shape layer hierarchy. So think twice before starting cleanup in this software. And the final technique is cleanup in Photoshop. It's used greatly for animation stylized like, for example, brush painting, because Photoshop has really powerful tools for working with different brushes. Moreover, you can even create your own cool presets. The principle here is also very simple. Render video from Adobe Animate, open it up with Photoshop, and on new video layers, redraw each drawing with a brush or any other tool. And to make the animation process in Photoshop easier, we recommend you to install the AnimDesign 2 extension. The download link and the tutorial will be attached to the lesson. And of course, the best option is to combine these techniques. For example, you can draft the bases in Adobe Animate, clean up and add colors in After Effects, and do all the stylization work in Photoshop like we did with this animation. So, you've got all the tools, just use them. And the most important thing for frame-by-frame animation is learn how to draw. So, that's it for today, and as a homework, we propose you to create the simple animated scene with one of these characters. Just animate the main objects using pose-to-pose approach, then animate secondary elements, and finalize the animation within one of the shown techniques or their combination. And by the way, if you want, you can come up with your own character design, but it must have the same structure, so it must be the ball, but with arms and other secondary elements to make your train follow through and overlap in action. So, good luck with your homework and see you soon, guys!